What if one of the most disturbing criminal cases in modern American history was never just about crime at all, but about money, your future, and the financial system you rely on every day? When the Epstein files began surfacing, most headlines focused on shocking allegations and powerful names, but very few asked a deeper question. How did one man move through elite financial circles for decades, protected by wealth, banks, legal teams, and political access, while ordinary Americans struggled under rules that seemed far less forgiving? This story isn't about rumors or internet theories. It's about how money flows in America, how influence quietly shields the powerful, and how the cost of these failures eventually lands on the public. Because when financial institutions look the other way, when settlements replace accountability, and when justice appears selective, the impact doesn't stay confined to courtrooms or boardrooms. It reaches retirement funds, taxpayer dollars, market confidence, and public trust itself. Jeffrey Epstein was not just a convicted offender, he was a financier with deep access to the highest levels of wealth and power. And the documents now referred to as the Epstein files reveal a complex web of financial relationships, legal protections, and institutional failures that allowed him to operate for years. In this video, we are not here to sensationalize names or chase controversy, but to break down what these files actually represent from an economic perspective, how elite money networks work, how banks and political systems respond when scandals involve the ultra-wealthy, and why the consequences rarely stop with the people directly involved. We will explore how regulatory fines, legal settlements, lobbying influence, and loss of public trust ultimately affect everyday Americans through taxes, markets, pensions, and long-term economic inequality. By the end of this video, you'll understand why the Epstein case is not just a dark chapter in criminal history, but a warning sign about how financial power can distort accountability and why transparency and informed citizens matter more than ever in the US financial system. To understand the financial impact of the Epstein files, we first need to understand how Jeffrey Epstein fit into America's elite financial ecosystem. Epstein was not publicly known for running a major hedge fund or bank, yet he accumulated extraordinary wealth and influence. His role was largely that of a private financial manager to billionaires, using opaque investment structures, offshore accounts, shell companies, and complex trusts. These tools are not illegal on their own, they are widely used by the ultra-wealthy, but they create secrecy. That secrecy becomes dangerous when oversight is weak. The Epstein files revealed how access to elite clients granted Epstein protection, mobility, and credibility inside financial circles. When money moves quietly through offshore jurisdictions and private arrangements, regulators struggle to track accountability. This is not just a failure of one individual, but a structural flaw in how wealth is managed at the top. Ordinary Americans operate under strict financial scrutiny, credit checks, audits, tax enforcement, while elite money often exists in shadows. This imbalance sets the foundation for abuse, not just criminally, but economically, because it concentrates power without transparency. As the Epstein scandal unfolded, attention turned toward financial institutions that had done business with him, particularly banks responsible for compliance and monitoring. In the US financial system, banks are legally required to report suspicious activity and prevent illicit financial behavior. When these systems fail, the consequences ripple outward. Large banks may pay fines or settlements that sound massive, hundreds of millions of dollars, but these costs are rarely absorbed by executives alone. They are passed on to shareholders, pension funds, retirement accounts, and sometimes customers. Millions of Americans unknowingly invest in these institutions through 401ks, mutual funds, and public pensions. When banks prioritize elite clients over ethical responsibility, the public bears the financial risk. Settlements also create a troubling precedent. Institutions can treat fines as a cost of doing business rather than a reason to change behavior. This weakens trust in the banking system, making people feel the rules are flexible for the wealthy and rigid for everyone else. Over time, that distrust damages financial participation and confidence, especially among middle and working-class Americans. Another critical dimension revealed by the Epstein files is the relationship between money and political influence. Wealth in America does more than buy assets. It buys access. Political donations, lobbying networks, and elite social connections can quietly shape laws, enforcement priorities, and regulatory intensity. When high-profile scandals involve wealthy individuals, the public begins to question whether justice is applied equally. This perception has real economic consequences. If enforcement agencies are underfunded or politically pressured, financial crimes go unchecked. That leads to greater inequality, because the system favors those who can afford legal defenses and political insulation. Meanwhile, everyday Americans face aggressive enforcement for comparatively minor issues: tax discrepancies, debt defaults, compliance errors. The Epstein case reinforced the belief that financial power can bend institutions, and when citizens lose faith in fairness, civic and economic engagement declines. That disengagement weakens democracy and long-term economic stability. The economic cost to ordinary Americans goes far beyond headlines. Investigations, lawsuits, regulatory failures, and systemic breakdowns are often funded by taxpayer money. When institutions fail to act early, the eventual cleanup becomes more expensive. Victims must fight long legal battles, while public resources are stretched thin. At the same time, market instability can follow scandals involving major financial players. Investor confidence drops, reputations suffer, and trust in regulatory systems erodes. For everyday people, this can mean slower economic growth, weaker retirement returns, and rising financial anxiety. The Epstein files exposed how inequality is not just about income, it's about accountability. When justice is delayed or denied for the powerful, the social contract fractures. People begin to believe the system is rigged, and that belief influences spending, saving, investing, and participation in the economy. Finally, the Epstein case highlights the role of media, markets, and public confidence in shaping economic reality. Financial markets depend heavily on trust in institutions, regulations, and transparency. When scandals repeatedly show that elites operate under different rules, cynicism grows. This cynicism discourages long-term investment and fuels polarization. It also distracts from meaningful reform, because outrage cycles replace sustained accountability. The Epstein files served as a case study in how unchecked financial power can corrode institutions over time. This is why this story matters beyond the individual crimes involved. It forces Americans to confront uncomfortable questions about how wealth is protected, how systems fail quietly, and how those failures ultimately affect everyone. The true financial impact of the Epstein scandal is not a single dollar amount. It is the slow erosion of trust in a system that depends on fairness to function. The Epstein files forced us to confront a hard truth about the American system. This was never just the story of one man. It was the story of how money can bend rules, delay justice, and quietly shield power, while the consequences fall on everyone else. When financial institutions fail to act, when settlements replace accountability, and when influence outweighs transparency, the cost is not paid by elites alone, it is paid by taxpayers, workers, retirees, and future generations who depend on trust for the economy to function. This case exposes how inequality is not only about wealth, but about who is held responsible and who is protected. And if there is one lesson here, it is that silence and indifference allow these systems to continue unchanged. A healthy financial system requires informed citizens, stronger oversight, and a refusal to accept secrecy as normal. Because when justice is selective, confidence collapses, and without confidence, no economy can truly survive. The real question now is not what was hidden in the Epstein files, but what we choose to demand going forward.